also joined by Drew Greenblatt in Maryland, who is president of Marlin Steel Wire Products. And you'll find out why we're speaking to Drew in just a few moments. But Drew, thank you so much also for joining us on a Monday night. And Razan, do we have you on the phone?
I don't hear the voice in the sky. Not yet.
We're hoping to have her soon. So again, I've pulled up her blog post, and until we have her, just so you guys know, she has about 2 weeks left before her visa expires, and she is going to have to go work in Bangladesh rather than staying here, which is her #1 priority. Drew, can you speak, or Daniel rather, can you speak to what's going on with Razan a little bit and help acquaint us with policy?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure what her actual individual situation is in terms of what visa she's on.
I won't force you to speculate. When we get her, we'll talk to her about it.
Okay, but sort of the thrust of her article was that the country does not have policies in place to keep enough of the young, best and brightest people that we should be having in our labor market.
Because there's a cap, no? There's a cap to how many visas that can be accepted, and at a certain point, it's over every year.
We've actually reached that cap this year, right, when it comes to H-1B visas?
There is and there isn't. There's a cap for 65,000. Those are for sort of regular private companies. Then there's 20,000 set aside for recent grads with master's degree and higher from U.S. universities. And then if you're working for a nonprofit or a research institution, then there's actually no cap. So the cap effectively is 85,000, but there were 129,000 H-1Bs granted last year.
Okay. Well, one of the things, that I think we have to bring up here, too, is that a lot of people like Razan herself, she is currently a student here, right? She's an international student,
and she spent 10 out of 25 years of her life here. So
yes, a lot of these people have been here for years. They've been educated here within the system. They're taking advantage of the great higher education system that America has to offer. And so then, once we've educated these people, why are we letting them, leave and take those skills?
And Drew, let's talk to you about that, because you employ, do you have 10% like foreign-born workers? Is that accurate?
It's just shy of 15%.
Okay.
But our nation desperately needs more smart people to help us grow our economy. We're in a really bad recession right now, and we need a lot of smart people coming together and giving us good ideas. Every year we have tens of thousands of very bright people we're training at our colleges and our universities, and once they're done their school, we boot them out of here. And it's upside down. We should be stapling a green card to every diploma that's a chemical engineering major or a mechanical engineering major, because these are kinds of roles that we need in our economy. It'll make our economy more vibrant. They'll create jobs. They'll create ideas. And, the next eBay or the next Google will come from brilliant ideas created by people that are recently graduating. The last thing we want to do is take these people and then send them to the other side of the world and have them start companies and compete against us. So I completely agree that we need more people like this to stay in our country. It makes us all richer. It makes us all thrive better.
Well, that's very well spoken, and I think that's what Razan would say as well. Daniel, what about critics who say that we're displacing native workers?
Well, there's sort of two things that I would say to respond. I sort of agree and I don't. First, the country is always going to need to keep and attract the best and the brightest. But in the face of disastrously high youth unemployment that we've had for a long time now, sort of how we manage it effectively is really the big question. And so sort of my response to Razan's article was, well, you're right, we do want you here. We do want the smartest and the best to stay, but I actually think that there are avenues for the best and the brightest young people to stay here, and some of the recent study sort of shows that. I'll just give you two two sets of data. One is the numbers are the 20,000 H-1Bs that I mentioned,
right,
as well as the uncapped H-1Bs for research and nonprofits. And then you have the OPT program, the Optional Practical Training Program, which is an uncapped program. As long as you graduate from a U.S. university, you can work for a year with an employer, and the employer can try you out. The rules are, I mean, they're not a lot of rejected. And if you got a degree in a science, technology, engineering, or math field, then you can have the visa for 29 months. And then those are just some of the options. Mm-hmm. And then the number, just to give you the quick numbers of, there was a recent study that showed how many science and engineering PhDs stayed in the country. The study came out in 2010. So those PhDs, the ones that after 1 year, 73% of them stay in the country. After 2 years, 67% of them stay in the country. Uh-huh. The five-year stay rate is 62%, and after 10 years, the people who get doctorates in those fields in this country say 60% of them have stayed in.
Can I play devil's advocate just for a moment here, because I think there's
really quickly.
Oh,
let me see if I can welcome Rozan. Rozan, is that? Can you hear us?
Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful! And we've doubled up on Drew, so that's also very exciting. Listen. This is going to be very interesting. Rozan, thank you so much. I'm sorry that we didn't have you for the beginning of our conversation, but we did talk about your blog post, and we've been sort of talking a little bit with Drew about, I don't know, maybe you caught all of this, but we've been talking about the pros and cons, and would love for you to weigh in a little bit on, I guess the question that we just asked that we were talking about with Daniel was this idea of displacing native workers and what your thoughts are on that, and I think we just lost you. No, we still have you.
We have Rozan. Okay. Well, I think, can you hear us, Rozan? You know, like I was saying, was to play devil's advocate here. I think a lot of people would say that if you look at the current unemployment situation, you have a lot of college graduates that cannot get a job, right, that are moving back in with their parents. And you have people, you hear these sob stories all the time of people that say, I have a Harvard degree, or I went to Yale, and I can't even get a job at McDonald's right now because the job market is so tough. And so maybe we have an overabundance of highly educated people that could enter the workforce.
Rozan, what are your thoughts on that?
Which isn't true, by the way, but I'm playing devil's advocate.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do actually with, you know, sort of the field that I personally am coming from.
Uh-huh.
Hello?
We've got you.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you guys cut out for a second there, so I'm just trying to check and see if you're there.
We're here.
But a lot of it comes from, you know, the field that I'm in, and has to do with, you know, international affairs and development and foreign policy. And a lot of that has to do with knowledge exchanges and dealing with, you know, different perspectives in different countries, as well as innovations. And I think that, you know, if you sort of overlook that by concentrating solely on, you know, the fact that a lot of, you know, you hear stories about college graduates not being able to find jobs, I think you lose out on really valuable resources that could potentially create jobs for these American citizens in the future.
Yeah.
I think she's spot on. I think she's spot on, because what's going on is this. When you keep more innovative, smart, entrepreneurial people and let them stay in our country, they're going to create jobs. They're going to create the next Google. They're going to create the next eBay. And what's going to happen is they're going to hire all these college grads that are looking for jobs. So it's critically important that we welcome to our shores all of these people that want to contribute to our society. And it would be, it's terrible that we're turning smart people away, people that really want to stay in our country.
I want to bring this, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Drew. I just wanted to throw out a comment that we just got live to Daniel very quickly while I've still got it in front of me. It's from W.T. Effington. It says, I'm a government IT contractor, and I know my Fortune 500 company is using H-1B visas to lower salaries. Is that something that you come across?
Absolutely. The sort of the separate problem that we haven't talked about yet is this, that the H-1B program is just riddled with loopholes. I mean, it legally allows you to underpay workers, you know, below market rates. And there's also no labor certification process. So an employer doesn't have to certify that he's looked for a U.S. worker first before hiring the foreign worker. And so, go ahead.
Oh no, please go ahead.
Just fixing those two things would go a long way. But instead, what you have is, I mean, there are cases like with the L1 visa, which is sort of similar to the H1B, but with fewer rules. And you have cases that have been documented in the press of companies, like big companies like Siemens, laying off American workers and then having them train their replacement on a temporary visa, and then hiring the person from the temporary visa, and the American worker then can't talk about it because it's part of their severance package.
Right.
Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt again.
No,
my internet
that's okay.
Yeah. Here, I've got another comment actually. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Razan. I think Alona was just going to ask.
Sorry, Razan. Here's another comment actually from W.T. Eppington, but I think that this brings up an interesting point, which he says, how about educating Americans for these vacancies? Do we really need full-blown degrees to fill these positions, or could we use high-tech vocational programs that get workers up to speed quickly and cheaply? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, sorry, you're probably talking about Razan, and I was jumping in.
No,
anyone out there is welcome.
Well, I was going to say that, I mean, before employers are allowed to turn to, employers are turning to immigration or temporary migration to get workers because it's cheap and fast, and retraining workers, it takes more work and costs more. We really should, we don't have, like a central government body that is studying the labor market and making suggestions about what we should do. Is the best way to fill a labor shortage, by retraining the population, or is it through immigration, or is it through something else?
What do you think? What do you think the solution is?
The answer is all the above. You want to retrain our wonderful people in our country that are unemployed, that are trained for the wrong skills. We want to do that. But we want to welcome, I mean, this is the nation that has a Statue of Liberty that welcomes people to our country. And we are a stronger country for that. You don't want us to build more walls to keep out immigrants. Immigrants keep us fresh. They give us new ideas. They give us entrepreneurial vigor. And your comments are so anti, looking to grow the pie and make us a better country. And immigrants give us so much value.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with that. But there's open borders, and there's managing migration for what I would say would be for more broadly shared prosperity. I think immigration.
We're not letting in nearly as many immigrants as we should let in.
Yeah, we're getting heated. Yeah, let's hear it.
Speak. By the way, we love when this happens, so nobody's saying this isn't okay, but please continue.
No, see, the way I look at it is honestly, the United States is a country that's based upon immigration. It always has been. And if you sort of ignore that dynamic that the U.S. has had for so long, I think you are, being very narrow-minded in that sense. And I'm not talking about you personally, in this hangout, but, in general, in terms of immigration policy. And I think, really drawing upon this global community of, innovation is so important to
I think we all agree on that, but what's the best way to do it? Is
letting people.
The best way to do it is to let more immigrants come in. We should.
So that it's up to.
Yeah, this is the only part.
Let them in, though.
Yeah, this is the only part, is that sometimes with a Google Hangout it's hard because we can't hear all the voices at one time because of technology, unfortunately, which we're still unwrinkling a little bit. This is sort of a new platform that we're doing here.
I think it's working well.
I just want to throw in a comment that came out of a similar article that was about this exact problem. I'm not going to say this commenter's handle because it's just a series of letters, but you guys can see it up on the screen. The USA already allows the most immigrants of any other nation or all of Europe combined. Plus, you fail to convey any downside to mass immigration, like 43% on welfare programs or 1/3 of federal prisoners are illegals. This country and its resources are already overcrowded. From an ecological standpoint, we could use fewer people, not more. The key is allowing the right immigrants and the right number of them, not just some massive flood from Mexico. And I think this speaks to a lot of voices that we're hearing in the United States, maybe more conservative voices that are interested in protecting the United States' self-interest in that way. Drew, how hard is it for you to hire a foreign-born worker?
It's a pain. You know, we have to hire lawyers. We have to make sure that that the people have come into our country legally. And you know, earlier one of the people in this roundtable suggested that, you know, it's easy in a year or 2 years you can get all the forms. You know, when you're hiring somebody, you're thinking in a 20 or 30-year cycle. You're not thinking about hiring somebody for a year or 2 year. So you don't want to pay some lawyer 5, 10, 20 grand, and then the person's gone in a year or the person's gone in 2 years. So it's a massive disincentive to bring people on, so you don't go through the aggravation. So what happens is it's hard to tailor a recruiting drive if you're going to have immigrants considered. And what happens is we need these immigrants in our country because they'll buy homes, they'll buy cars, they'll buy refrigerators, and they'll pay taxes. In general, not in all cases, but in general.
Well, do they contribute to the economy? Yeah. That makes sense.
They're very good for our economy. We're very blessed to have them. It's a wonderful thing that people are rushing to our shores and they're not rushing to Europe. That's a good thing.
Well, in light of that, let me read you guys another comment, actually. So this one comes from John Enigma Doe. And he says, so what about the other country? Won't they have brain drain occurring since America has all the best and brightest?
Daniel, what do you think about that?
There does need to be a balance because I mean, developing countries need smart people too, but so do we. And my parents are both immigrants, and I'm very pro-immigration, but I'm also an American first. But
Daniel, can I ask you really quickly, what would your response directly be to someone like Razan in this situation? There are other options for her. Could you suggest, you know, some other option before we lose her?
I would try to advise her about the visa categories that are available. You know, there's the OPT program, which I talked about when Razan wasn't on.
Right.
I don't know if you've already used that. And then if I believe you're working in the development field. You know, the H-1Bs for people working for nonprofits, which I assume a lot of the organizations in that field is uncapped. That's one way to go. It's not subject to the 85,000 cap.
Roseanne, is that something that you've looked into?
Honestly, to talk about my personal situation a little bit, it's not the cap that's the issue. It's not that you know, I don't have the skills necessary or anything like that. It's difficult to find employers who are willing to go through the process. And I think a lot of employers find it intimidating, which, you know, having researched the process, it's not quite as intimidating as, I guess, policymakers like to make it appear to be. And it's relatively straightforward, to be perfectly honest. If you have an immigration lawyer, it's something like $4,000 at the very, very height of the amount of money required to sponsor a foreign national. And I think that comes back, you know, multiple fold in terms of investing in an employer.
Drew, really quickly,
interesting.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask Drew really quickly because this ties directly into what he was mentioning earlier about the difficulty of hiring foreign workers. Could you be a little more specific? You don't have to go into any huge detail, but you know, is it more difficult? Razan said, you know, it may appear to be more difficult than it actually is. You have a lot of experience with the actual practice of doing so. Could you just walk us through what makes it difficult?
What makes it difficult is if, let's say we were to hire that person and pay a lawyer $4,000 or $10,000. What happens if they don't work out? What happens if in 6 months it doesn't work out or 3 months it doesn't work out? So that incentivizes you to stay with something that's more safe, like hiring a Native American or an American person that has all their papers in order, because you don't have to take the $10,000 risk. So what happens is if you have a choice, you're always incentivized never to hire the immigrant that has papers that are not completely resolved. So this is part of what we need to change. We have to make the path very simple, easy, and elegant for qualified, honorable, you know, crime-free immigrants to come to our country. And if you make it very easy for them to get a job, so companies like mine don't have to pay $4 grand or 10 grand, we're going to hire a lot more people. and it'll be good for the immigrants. It'll be good for our nation.
Well, Daniel, I want to give you the last word and find out from you what you think is the best temporary solution or permanent solution as this stuff is being explored. What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see some sort of commission like what the UK has to study the labor market, to see where occupational shortages are, and to recommend to Congress every year sort of the appropriate levels to help grow our economy, the appropriate levels of migration. And generally, I'd like to see a shift from what we have, which we've been talking about, the H-1B program. This is a temporary guest worker program. It just has a lot of flaws. I'd rather see us getting the best or brightest and putting them on a path to citizenship, not keeping them as sort of indentured workers where they're tied to one employer and they're underpaid and they can't move up the ladder very easily because they're stuck in these green card backlogs that can last for years and years. Yeah. So there's a lot of changes. There's a huge list of changes that I want to make, but there are better ways to help. I mean, immigration is really good for the economy. It just has to be done right. None of us are anti-immigration. All I want is it to be done right, for there to be adequate protections for U.S. workers as well. Because if there aren't, then U.S. workers who think that maybe they're being overlooked in favor of immigrants, and there's going to be less public support for immigration. Right. I want there to be more public support so that we can have more.
Well, I think we should have more public discussions about that. Right?
I agree.
So there isn't so much misunderstanding.
I agree.
I guess you could
we
say.
Want to thank all three of you so much for participating and for educating us and for hopefully informing and inspiring you guys. Thank you, Razan. I hope we don't lose you. I will say, from a personal point of view, I hope we don't lose you. Thank you for being the springboard for this discussion with your blog post. And thank you guys for drawing our attention to it by commenting on it so much and by having so many interesting points of view. We hope you will continue to share those points of view with us right here on HuffPost Live.